going to call the meeting to order. We're going to ask Councilman Cook to please lead us in prayer and Councilman Castillo to lead us in the pledge.
Holy Father, help us to live by your wisdom and make the right decisions in all we face today. Pour your wisdom into our hearts and heads so that our thoughts, words, actions, and choices will be pleasing to you and a blessing to those around us. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, members. We welcome you to the City Parish Council briefing. We, as your representatives in the Lafayette Consolidated Government, welcome your involvement and encourage your participation. If you wish to address the council on the item on this agenda, please fill out a blue request to address the council form. The blue form is available to you in the foyer and should be submitted to the council clerk, Ms. Veronica L. Williams, seated to my left, prior to the call of the agenda item. It is important to fill out the blue form completely. If the card is not completely filled out or is not legible to the clerk, you will not be given the opportunity to speak. If you have materials you wish to submit to the council, please give those to Ms. Williams along with your blue form. In an effort to allow everyone an opportunity to be heard, the 5-minute rule will be in effect. Speakers shall refrain from debating, personal attacks, and from making confrontational or derogatory comments. I'm requesting that the first row to my left be used for media only. Lastly, food and drinks are not allowed in the auditorium, and all phones and electronic devices shall be silenced from this point forward. I am also requesting that anyone who approaches the council state their name and title for the official record. Documents, including agendas and minutes related to this and other meetings, are posted online at www.lafayettela.gov. Have a couple of chair announcements. First, Council Member Liz Hebert is unable to attend tonight's briefing due to a previous commitment. So Councilman Hebert will not be here, and since this was a special called meeting, it was not on any member's agenda. So I want to publicly thank all members who was able to respond in a timely manner to attend this briefing in this special called meeting. In addition, I did get a number of inquiries from media and phone calls actually just before coming into the auditorium. This is a public meeting on behalf of the council. As you have heard, public comment will be allowed if you choose to make public comment, but there is no votes taking place tonight. Some people was wondering if in fact there was some item that would be discussed and possibly voted upon. No votes are taken tonight. This briefing was requested based on a lot of the things that have been going on in our community over the past 30+ days, and I just felt that we needed to hear some information greater than what was out there. I want to also publicly thank the administration for responding to this briefing. Again, this was not a normal called meeting. This is a issue, a thing that we can address, call these types of meetings to address particular issues like we're doing here today. So I appreciate the response in such short notice. This was time sensitive as we consider things going forward as a government. So again, thank you to the council for making your time available here today, and thank you for the administration for honoring this request. But to the public, again, there will be no votes taken at this meeting. It is what we call a briefing, where we will be receiving information, and council members may have questions during or after the briefing, and the public will be allowed to speak for 5 minutes following the actual briefing that's going to be delivered. Members, I did not, on this particular agenda, do a president's report, nor did I updates or comments from the council in advance of the meeting. So this in advance of the agenda item. So there will be no opportunity to acknowledge or make announcements of anything that you may be doing or being a part of. So with that said, we're going to now, Joseph, yeah, Jeremy Spy, okay. I'm going to ask Joseph to read the agenda item, please.
The administration will brief the council on matters related to benefits, resources, services, and programs for surviving spouses and dependents of Lafayette City-Parish Consolidated Government employees when life is lost in the course and scope of employment.
Mr. Robidoux, I'm going to turn the floor over to you at this time for this briefing. Again, I thank you for responding to my request, and you could go forward at this time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me thank the council and let them know how much I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with this briefing. And we put it together fairly quickly. What we decided as we were going through it, there's so many different options depending on individual circumstances that we're focusing the presentation on survivors of employees that had not yet vested in the retirement system. And so these would be the most vulnerable population out there. Anybody that happened to be past that window would receive what we're talking about here tonight, plus whatever retirement packages out there. So I'll go over the list. Sidra, if you don't mind, we'll get started. And let you know what all we're going to. Thank you, V. So we'll start with the benefits that we're going to go over. We're going to go over the following benefits: retirement available, workers' compensation, including a funeral benefit, accrued annual and sick leave that's available, the LCG lump sum payment that's made to the survivor. There's also then the state lump sum and the federal lump sum. And then lastly and separately, we'll go over the health insurance survivor benefits on a separate presentation. We categorize the benefit types into 6 categories. Our first category is going to be that you'll see it will be rank and file, and the second will be those rank and file employees in the course and scope of their work. And so when I say rank and file, it's really everyone that's an LCG employee outside of fire and police. And so we'll show the difference between a rank and file employee that passes away and a rank and file employee that passes away while doing their job. The second group, like I mentioned, would be fire, and then fire in the line of duty, police, and police in the line of duty. So that'll be the categories that we will go through with you this evening. And then 2 notes to begin before we get to the actual details. Lafayette Consolidated Government is self-insured, and I want to make sure that everybody understands what that means. It doesn't mean that we have a big pot of money and then whatever benefits have to be paid out of there, we just write a check and that we can do whatever we want. We have stop-loss coverage. As any of you that have insurance know, it's a Blue Cross policy. So the coverages are determined under the plan. The premiums are set based on the coverages that we provide, and ultimately there's all the federal laws and regulations that go with managing a benefit package. And so we are self-insured. In a layman's terms, I like to explain that it's similar to having an umbrella policy. We agree to cover a certain amount, and then at some point the insurance companies will kick in if it's something that's a really expensive procedure that's above and beyond what our stop-loss coverage is. And then also, as I mentioned before, we'll present the health insurance kind of separately from the rest of the benefits, just so that we can dive into that in case you guys have any more questions. So before I go to the main slide, at any point during the presentation, if you have a question about what you're seeing, then please interrupt. It's not like I need to get through the whole thing and then answer any questions. If questions come along, then I think it makes sense to go ahead and ask them as we go.
Mr. Terrio?
Just to follow up, and I know you put it on the slide, you had it broken down into rank and file, and then also the two separate. Sure, or I would imagine that your information here is going to go through the benefits per individual ones?
Yes, each one will go through each of those benefits that I showed, and we'll do it for each of the categories. And so as we build out the slide presentation, you'll see it'll be a matrix of all of them side by side.
Okay, because one question I have was that what applies to one does not apply to all. It will not be the same.
That's right, and that's what you'll see, exactly. That's how we laid it out.
Okay, very good. That's all I have for now.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sidra, we can go ahead and go to the first one. So as you can see, we've got each of those categories that was on the first slide, and you may not be able to see it on the screen. And so it's not quite as big as I had hoped. Can y'all see that? Because can you see it? No?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on your monitor?
Yeah,
Okay.
on the monitor.
Okay. All right, so each of the categories, again, retirement, workers' comp funeral, accrued annual sick leave, LCG, lump sum, state lump sum, and then the federal lump sum. And so in the first category is the rank and file employees in the rank and file in the course and scope of their work. And so you'll see that under the retirement benefits, these are, oh, you went a little fast, Sidra. These are the most vulnerable because they're not eligible. They weren't retirement eligible. So anyone that we're looking at on these charts are not retirement eligible. So for the, we have the rank and file and the rank and file course and scope. Then after that, we have the fire and the line of duty death. And then lastly, we have, in the fire, I need to mention that there's a clause, and Jay can probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there's a occupation-related health issues clause which treats firemen a little bit different for if there's some heart issues or some lung issues, and so that's not incorporated really into the scope of what we're doing because that's kind of a separate and above issue that the firefighters have in the way of benefits. And then the last two categories are the police and the line of duty death. So we're gonna go through each of these so you can see a comparison of what each of the different survivor benefits are. First one, for the rank and file, you'll see that they're not retirement eligible. So whatever money has been withheld from their checks and put into the retirement system, they will get that money back. It's not the portion that LCG put in, but the portion that the employees put in out of their checks.
Okay.
For fire, if it's not in the line of duty, it varies between 30 and 60% of the annual salary for firefighters, and that depends on whether it's a surviving spouse alone or with children. It can make its way up to the 60%. For firefighters in the line of duty, it is 66% of the annual salary for life, up to 100% when you factor in any children. For police, not in the line of duty, it depends. It gets a little complicated. The municipal police retirement system treats those that were employed prior to 2013 a little bit different than the ones from 2013 on. So if you're prior to 2013, it's very similar to the fire. It's 40 to 60% of the annual salary. From 2013 on, so for new hires, you're limited to the contributions that you made into the retirement system. You receive that back in the form of a check. And then the police in the line of duty receive 100%, the survivor receives 100% of the officer's annual salary for life. And when we say 100% of the annual salary, you know, there's a little more complication. I don't want to get too much in the weeds. I'm trying to give everyone a broad overview, but it's a final average compensation. So you take the 3 highest years of pay, calculate whatever that average is, and that's the annual compensation that's received for life. And on that one, and on the firefighters, when we say for life, we mean for life of the surviving spouse, regardless of whether or not they get remarried. The second benefit is the workers' comp benefit. You can see for the rank and file, fire, and police, if it's not an on-the-job related death, then there's no workers' comp benefit. If you die while on the job, then you get the 32.5% to 65% annual salary for life. So for workers' comp, regardless of the category that you fall under, rank and file, fire, police, line of duty, those 3 all receive up to 65%. And again, that's if it's a single widow, or if it is with children, it's up to 65% of the salary. So at this point, the benefit is for the surviving spouse's line of duty with children, you'll get, for police, 100% of his paycheck for life, plus you'll get 65% of his paycheck for life. The fire, it's a small reduction from the police, because there's the benefits associated with the dependents. For police, as the dependents age out, 18 or 23 if they're in school, once they're age out, then all of their benefits go to the spouse. So the family continues to get 100% under the police column. For the firefighters, when the spouse, when the dependents age out, then you're left with the spouse getting their share of the benefit. And then for the rank and file, it's the same as the firefighters.
Excuse me 1 second. Mr. Terrio.
Sir, you mentioned for life, just to throw out there, are there any circumstances that would preclude them not receiving it for life? Would there be anything that we're aware of that would happen, or any circumstances that would prevent them from receiving these benefits for life?
My understanding is for the workers' comp, if you remarry, it's life or remarry. I think there's an asterisk down at the bottom where you can see. So for the workers' comp, it can be up to $653 per week for the spouse with children for life or until remarried. As it relates to the first row, which is the salary, the annual salary is for life regardless.
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 Okay.
That's the 100%.
That's the 100%, right. You're going to receive the
The
salary.
retirement benefit don't stop, just the workers' comp stop.
The workers' comp stops if you get remarried.
That's where I was going. Thank you. That's all I have now.
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Mayor, is there any length of time they have to be on the job to receive these benefits?
No. The way that it works for the retirement benefit in a line of duty death, and that's for either the fire or the police, is if you're on the job for 1 day, those 2 retirement systems recognize that employee as being a full 100% vested employee or retiree to receive the maximum amount, meaning the 3 years, 3-year average of their salary. So you get accelerated all the way to the max benefit that you could get as a full retiree.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. So the next row has to do with the funeral benefits. Again, if you're not qualified under workers' comp, meaning it wasn't on the job, then you would receive nothing. And for the other 3 workers' comp benefits are $8,500 lump sum payment. Next category is accrued, annual, and sick leave. And for all categories at LCG, our accrued annual sick leave is unlimited with no cap. So however much you accumulated in both leave and in sick will be paid to you in a lump sum payment by LCG. Next category is the LCG lump sum benefit. And so for rank and file, actually across the board, this is 2 times the employees, the deceased employee's annual salary. So that's a lump sum payment that's made to the surviving spouse in every one of these categories. And let me say, now that we're at this point, is the retirement benefit, which is done through the various retirement plans, whether it's the firefighters, whether it's the municipal police, whether it's the one for the municipal employees for the rank and file. The benefits that come out of those systems is based on the premiums that LCG pays into those systems. It's not state money in any way. It's the employee's contribution and it's the city's contribution that go in and fund that system, and then whatever they invest in, whatever those earnings are. But it's about a 3-to-1 what the LCG puts in versus what the employees put in. For instance, I think fire is in the 25% to 28% of the salary is what the contribution rate is. Municipal police is around 30%, and then MERS is, I'm drawing a blank, but MERS is around 20, averaging in the low 20s, 20-something percent. And the employees put in anywhere from 9 to 10% of their checks. Yes, sir.
Mr. Terrio.
Just a follow-up, sir, again. In dealing with the accrued annual and sick leave and also the LCG lump sum benefit, this is based on, like you mentioned earlier, I would imagine the highest 3 years salary?
Yeah, I think
Trying to be clear, make sure.
the accrued annual and sick leave is paid out at the salary at the date of passing. So whatever that salary was, just like if you retire, whatever your salary is, you get paid out your accrued, however many hours it is, times whatever your rate of pay is.
Okay, so that's not the highest 3 years, although that would be the highest one because I think it'd be you're at the highest salary right there.
Let me just make sure, because it could be done a number of ways. It could be done over your life, it could be done the highest 3, or it could be done, it's calculated. Let me find out how it's calculated. Do we know?
I'm asking.
It's at the current salary. So whatever the current salary is at retired or at the date of passing, that's what's paid at however many hours you've accumulated.
And that would be for the accrued annual and the lump sum?
For the accrued annual and sick leave, and the lump sum is, yes, your current last full 12 months, which is pretty close to your current. Unless it happens to fall where in the last 12 months there was a change. But it's your current level times 2.
Got you. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
That's all the questions for now.
All right. So the only additional information, if you look at the asterisk down at the bottom of the slide, is that it's up to $200,000. So for anyone that's making over $100,000, you're capped at the $200,000 limit. So everyone else would receive their full 2 times their annual salary. Next category, I'm sorry, I was going over the benefits and explaining about how the retiree benefits that go to the surviving spouse is LCG payments into that system. The workers' comp is LCG payments that are required by law to make. Everyone has to make the workers' comp payments. The accrued annual sick leave is obviously LCG payments, and the LCG lump sum is the LCG payments. The last 2 are, for information purposes, these are the state lump sum payments, and you can see that for the rank and file, there's none. And then for fire, And police, if it's not job-related, then it's 0. And for fire and line of duty and police line of duty, there's a lump sum $200,000 payment made to the surviving spouse, plus $25,000 per child. Did I say 200? It's 250. My eyes are bad. 250 from the state, 25,000 per child. And then the final category, final row is the federal benefit. Again, it's for line of duty death only, and you'll see that the Fed payments for the fire and for the police equal to $350,000 lump sum payment to the surviving spouse. So what we did next is just came up with an example of a survivor benefit utilizing.
1 second, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor. Mr. Cohn.
Go back, Sidra.
Mr. Robideau, before you continue, you are identifying lump sum payments, cash, checks, whatever. There are also some benefits, some educational benefits for the surviving children?
There is, and we may mention them on a slide at the very end, not with any dollar amounts, but yes, you can go to, I think for higher ed, you can attend any university in the state of Louisiana, and that's another additional state benefit that the state provides.
Thank you, sir.
So, so to give an example, employee survivor benefit, we made some assumptions just to kind of run the numbers. A 35-year-old surviving spouse with 8-year-old twins, the employee at a $45,000 annual salary, and using a life expectancy of 80, which would mean a 45-year kind of payout term from the 35-year-old to the life expectancy of 80. And then also in this, we're assuming that there's no accrued annual and sick leave. Any accrued annual and sick leave would be on top of it. So next slide, Sidra. We started to fill in what a rank and file employee would get in the way of survivor benefits if it's not job related, and you can see the total at the bottom is approximately $97,500. And again, remember, these are all with some assumptions, and every individual would be a little bit different, but again, we tried to pick the most vulnerable that are not eligible for retirement. For the rank and file that is in the course and scope of their job, a surviving spouse would then receive $775,000 would be the benefits, and the reason for that big difference is the workers' comp payment that would be made to the surviving spouse, assuming that they didn't get remarried, exactly. And so, and with the assumptions from the previous page. If you go to the fire, not in the line of duty, it's a $1.3 million benefit. And the reason for that one being large is that they get a retirement benefit regardless at the 30 to 60%. And so that factors out for life, and so that benefit carries out and regardless of whether they remarry. Firefighter in the line of duty is the $3.4 million. And of course, for the firefighters, they would get both the workers' compensation plus the retirement benefit, which is what pushes that number significantly, adding in the 250 and the 350. And again, that's assuming that there's no investment done with any of that money. We didn't calculate that. That's putting the lump sum payments away in a shoebox and not investing it. So this is just the basic amount of money that you would receive from as a survivor of an LCG employee. Police, not in the line of duty. That benefit is the $97,500. I chose to use 2013 or beyond employee, because you only get the employee contributions back if from the retirement plan. If it's an employee for the police prior to 2013, then it would be a benefit similar to what the fire column shows, the 1.3.
Why was that cut out?
Again, and I kind of glossed over it maybe, but the municipal police employees retirement system made that change. That's not something that the municipalities change. It's done for the whole system, and they decided that it was in their best interest to strengthen the retirement system. All of the retirement systems in Louisiana, I shouldn't say all, there's some that are very well funded and very healthy. Some have struggled to maintain really good funded ratios. And in order to do that, some of them have made some changes to their benefit structure, and that was one of them.
So that happened on the police side, not the fire side?
That's correct. And that's two totally different retirement systems that are managed separately by their own boards and make their own decisions independent of each other. And then the last column is the police line of duty death, and again, that's the same as the fire line of duty death, 3.4 million, and again, it's because of the 100% salary for life plus the workers' comp benefit. Those two alone contribute well over 2 million of the 3.4 million. Then if you add in the money from the state and the feds, and then the 2 times the annual salary is what pushes you to the 3.4 million.
1 second, please. Mr. Bellard.
Wait, what salary is this based on again?
45,000. So I tried to pick someone that had maybe been employed for a couple of years and certainly hadn't reached the retirement age.
If you back off the, and if you don't mind doing it for me, probably be easier for you, the fire and the police, what is LCG contributing, taking those out? Meaning on the fire LODD, if we take out, I'm interested in seeing what LCG itself stands alone. What's that amount for both of those?
He's talking about taking away the federal and the state.
Yeah, so
I see the 3.4, so you'd minus the,
well, if you minus the 350 and minus the 250, minus 25,000 for 2 kids, because we assumed 2 kids.
twins. Yeah, okay.
We assumed 2 kids in this example. So that's 300 and 350, so 650 minus, the 3.4 million minus the 650.
And that would be LCG's.
That would be what LCG is, their payments either into the retirement system, lump sum, workers' comp, it's all LCG money.
And you do it for both columns.
It would be the same.
The same.
Regardless. It would be the same for, all across.
Okay.
You back off the bottom 2.
Okay, and that would be our share.
That would be our share. The only caveat I would say is on the retirement benefit, LCG puts up about 3 to 1. So of the contribution made to the retirement system, 9 or 10% comes from the employee, 25 to 30% comes from LCG. So some of that benefit is because the employee has put in for, in this case, 2 years.
That's all I have. Thank you.
That's it.
All right, I think that's it for that slide. So now we'll move into the survivor health insurance. And again, all survivors have the option to elect COBRA. It's something that the federal law requires us to offer. And I think it's 3 years that an employee or a survivor can stay on the COBRA plan if they choose. So the categories here is that we listed out as kind of the insurance type and then what the monthly premiums could be. So as we go through, for rank and file employees, both on the job and not on the job, they have the option to go to COBRA. And if they go to COBRA, you'll see the ranges there. It's $430 a month for a single and up to $1,119 for a full family is what the survivors would be.
I need you to clear something up for me.
Sure.
First, you said the federal government mandates that we offer that. Then in the presentation, you say that they could choose COBRA as an option? Is it mandatory or is it an option?
It's mandatory that we offer it, because the federal government says you can't just say, all right, you're not covered anymore, you're out on your own. Someone may have a pre-existing condition, it may be difficult for them to find insurance, and so COBRA is a federal rule that allows them to go, and it gives them a 3-year window to find out if they can get insurance on the market. So it's mandatory that we make that option available. But there's nothing to prevent an employee that may say, well, I can go online, I can go shop private insurance and I can find a plan, or the Affordable Care Act. I can go get a plan for $800, $900 for family. They can go do that at any point in time while they're under COBRA. There's nothing to prevent them from doing that, but we have to let them know that the COBRA option is available. And that's our exact coverage plan at different premium rates. So the coverage that they had as an LCG, that would transfer over to the surviving spouse. As it relates to coverage, the premium is what changes.
Okay. Mr. Terrio?
Mr. Robideau, I don't want to get you off topic on this. Let me ask you a quick question. In dealing with children, are we going to get into information about that in future slides? Or do I need to go back to where you had everything put out for rank and file, fire and police? And
No, if you want to ask a question about those slides, we need to probably go back, because the children is all a part of what we showed on those slides, the dependents.
I've had some questions, didn't know how to respond, so the reason we're doing this is to make sure
Should
we
we go
clarify.
back?
Are there any circumstances where children would not be covered? Which means, I understand that if you have a fire policeman, he or she dies in the line of duty, say the wife dies and the husband's there with their child, I'm sure they're covered, and for life, but say if he were to have another child with somebody in the future, would that child be covered?
Under which?
After the fact?
After the fact, the retirement benefits would be limited, if I'm understanding it correctly, to the surviving spouse and any dependents of that couple
At the time?
at the time of death.
So
Anything that happens later on, it wouldn't be added to it.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be, sorry? Yeah, I understand that. Okay, so even if let's say that the gentleman, the wife that died, that was a firewoman, and they had a child together, and then maybe he had previous children. Would all those children be covered at that time?
All the dependents of the deceased employee would be covered.
Whether they're blood or not?
Whether they what?
No-
Yeah, I'm talking about stepchildren.
Yeah. Yeah, so if they were on the plan at the time of death, then yes, they would still be covered. And then under workers' comp, stepchildren are included in workers' comp. Yeah, stepchildren are included. But I thought you were asking if they had a child after the fact.
That was one of the questions. I asked both questions, actually. You picked up on it.
That starts to get a lot more complicated, obviously.
Right.
But the retirement benefits and then those types of things, I don't think would apply in the workers' comp. Now, the health insurance, would they still be covered? Then the answer would be yes, if they get added to the plan.
Because I want to make sure we're clear in that.
The
in the future-
retiree benefit is based on the spouse, the surviving spouse will get X amount, a percentage of the salary. Each child will get 10%. Natural born. and adopted, right? We'll get to 10%. It's going to total up to 100%. Once those children reach a certain age, 18 or 23 for college, they fall off. Under the police, those percentages all accrue to the benefit of the spouse. So the family will always get 100% of that benefit. For the firefighters, once the children fall off, you'll be limited to what the spouse's benefit is, and it's somewhere in that 65% of the salary.
Okay, well, you jumped way ahead. That's where I was going with all this. And it's to the age of 18? Is that what you're saying?
18, 23 if they're in school.
18, if not 23 in school. Okay, very good. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, let's see, where were we? Rank and file. Okay, so now we go to fire, not on the job. Again, it's COBRA for both the fire and police, not on the job. Then the final two are the line of duty deaths. And so what happens then is that those two are treated at the retiree rate, which currently is $676 a month for those two categories. The next slide is where we compare ourselves to some other municipalities. We reached out to a number of municipalities to get the information. These were the ones that were responsive, and so we were able to complete the chart for Lafayette, Baton Rouge, Alexandria, and Lake Charles. And so as we look and compare ourselves to other municipalities, as it relates to the retirement benefit, because all of those, and this one is limited to the police because that's most of the questions that the council members asked of us. Line of duty death. Everyone is in the municipal police retirement system, so everyone would get the 100% salary for life. The next is the workers' comp. Everyone would get the workers' comp benefit, the same workers' comp benefit for life, and everyone would get the workers' comp funeral benefit of $8,500 for life. The changes start to occur if you look at accrued annual and sick leave. In Lafayette, again, if you remember from the previous slides, our accrued annual sick leave is unlimited with no cap. And so, as many of you know, those checks can be pretty substantial for those that have put in the time. For Baton Rouge, they limit their annual accrued annual and sick leave to 960 hours of annual and sick combined, so a little less than half a year of benefits for Baton Rouge surviving spouses. Alexandria has unlimited annual leave, and then a third of sick leave would be paid out. And then for Lake Charles, they give up to 3 years of annual leave and up to 600 hours of sick leave. The next category is the lump sum benefit that is afforded to the survivors. In Lafayette, it's 2 times the annual salary. In Baton Rouge, it's limited to $50,000. In Alexandria and Lake Charles, it's limited to $10,000.
Did y'all receive this in writing?
We double verified everything that we could. Most of it came either via phone call, email, or both.
Okay, go ahead for now.
Okay. The next two categories are the state lump sum and the federal lump sum benefit, and those would be the same across the board for all the municipalities. And then the last category is the health insurance benefit. And so for Lafayette, as we mentioned on the previous slide, we would treat the survivor as a retiree and use the retiree rate for family of $676 per month. For Baton Rouge, there's been a lot of information out there about what Baton Rouge does or does not do, and we confirmed with both the city attorney and the Office of Benefits that the survivors actually have a separate class for the survivors, and so they have their own class, and that rate for the family is $866 for the Baton Rouge surviving spouse. I just note the employees in Baton Rouge have an ordinance that says if you retire, then you pay the same that you paid as an employee. And so that benefit does exist for retirees, but in the case of a surviving spouse, they have a separate chart that applies to surviving spouses. The employee's rate, though, is $738 a month, and so a retiree would stay at the $738 a month for the same plan that, or the similar plan that Lafayette has. Alexandria?
Before you go to that,
Yes, sir.
that's why I asked if you had it in writing, because I had our office reach out to Baton Rouge, and of course, we didn't have the ability or the time to do a lot of comparisons, but they sent us a lot of information. Who pays that rate? You say that the rate for Baton Rouge is $866, and on this chart is showing Lafayette $676 and retiree $738. But my question is, in Baton Rouge, who pays the $866? Is the city of Baton Rouge paying for that premium?
No, sir. The surviving spouse pays that.
Mr. Bellard.
Real quick, I'm going to jump back up to the lump sum benefit. The other ones are 50, 10, and 10, and we're 2 times the annual salary?
Correct.
That much above?
It's a considerable difference. I mean, if you assume a $45,000 salary, then it would be a $90,000 check.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Terrio.
Just to follow up on the line above that with the accrued and annual sick leave, and I know LCG has been doing it for a while, but what I want to relay to the public is that most private businesses today, they provide sick leave to employees, but there's no monetary value associated with that, which means if an employee leaves, retires, gets terminated, or whatever, there's no monetary value associated with that. So here you have employees that are being paid for sick leave that can be accrued to any amount?
To any amount.
You're going to be getting a lot more applications after this meeting. So, okay, that's all I have for now.
The next municipality was Alexandria's, and Alexandria's also has a surviving spouse chart, and the surviving spouse would pay $858 for their family coverage. And then finally, Lake Charles has a retiree monthly rate of $1638. I will say that my sense is that that falls under the COBRA concept, and that most employees or most survivors from Lake Charles would probably go and find insurance from the private sector or under the Affordable Care Act. Because a really good benefit of most of the income that's received by the surviving spouses is that they are tax-free, which means they wouldn't factor into what your salary is for the Affordable Care Act. So you should be able to qualify if you're in the situation like Charles, if you are paying that high of a premium for COBRA.
Okay. Of course, a lot of things have been said, and recently Youngsville has taken some action. And I realize it's not on this chart, and if you're not prepared to speak to it, I understand. Actually, I got a question for you, Paul, Mr. Scott, but this kind of goes both directions. If I understand what Youngsville did, they increased their funeral payout to $15,000, and on this chart it shows everybody's at $8,500. But I understand Youngsville is going to pay $15,000, and they extended benefits, and I'm assuming that's health benefits, for 5 years after the death. What prevents us from doing that? Any type of increase or extension in this particular case?
Is that for Paul or for me, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I guess it went both ways. My concern is, as long as I've been on this council, one of the challenges or one of the things that has been told to us over and over is the giving away of public resources. So I don't know, I tried calling Youngsville. I haven't been successful yet to see if they had gotten any type of legal opinions as to their ability to pay things out or to extend anything. And I don't know if what they did actually amounts to that. I think they did a resolution or something, but at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is if there's something that can be done that hasn't been done. And I see Youngsville has done something that people have gotten really excited about. And I want to see if those things are afforded to us or where do we fall in comparison to that.
I'll address it first, and then I'll turn over some of the more legal questions to Paul. Certainly, the expanding the funeral benefits from the $8,500 by $6,500 to equal $15,000 is something that's doable. It's not doable for free. You can make the case that our lump sum annual benefit, which Youngsville doesn't have, 2 times the salary, is enough to pay for more than enough to pay for any additional funeral cost. But that's not to say that it's not something that the council could consider, but it's something that anything that we add, any additional benefit over and above what we currently have is going to come with some cost, either to all employees, health insurance cost, or LCG would eat it. And as it relates to whether or not they can do it, and whether it's a resolution or an ordinance, I can't really speak to that. I'll defer to Paul, but I would think that between the additional money for the funeral, the lump sum, the 5-year extension to where they're paying for that, those are things that can be looked at as an enhanced benefit to what's already offered if the council was interested in that, but it wouldn't be at zero cost. I mean, we just have to figure out if it's something that makes sense when you consider the benefits that are currently in place.
Anything,
Yeah, I guess I can expound on some of that, or at least add to it. As far as what Youngsville did, I'm sort of perplexed in a sense because, first of all, Youngsville, if anyone doesn't know, is a Larson Act municipality, which we are not. We are a home rule charter municipality, and so there are slightly different rules that apply and procedures that apply. I'm not real familiar with the Larson Act, but I went back and I looked at several statutes that deal with municipalities' processes under the Larson Act and what a resolution is versus what an ordinance is. And I guess my state of being perplexed comes from the fact that this is a resolution that I've been given that Youngsville has done. In reading the statutes, a resolution is very similar in nature to our resolution that we use under the Home Rule Charter, and that is the resolution is not a law, it is not binding, it is not enforceable, it is simply the will of the Youngsville Council. And so why the council did what they did in the form of a resolution, I don't know, and I'm not sure if there was a particular exception to why they did it, but just the mere procedure of it concerns me in the sense of I'm not sure if that is ultimately then going to be converted to an ordinance that requires introduction, public comment, a second meeting, a vote, just like under the Home Rule, the Larson Act has a similar effect. The difference that we may also have with Youngsville is that Youngsville is not self-insured. My understanding is that they're privately insured, and I'm not sure whether or not they fall into the same category as it relates to health benefits and the plan that they have or the administration of their health benefits, and whether or not what they do or what they don't do may affect grandfathered status. LCG has a grandfathered plan, and there are certain things that LCG can and can't do to jeopardize that grandfathered status, because what happens if the plan loses its grandfather status is the likelihood is that premiums across the board go up. And so everyone suffers in that circumstance. And so there has to be a very careful and studied process in looking at all of the options available, particularly when you deal with the group health plan, because you certainly don't want to jeopardize the grandfather status attempting to add benefit and to the detriment of the remaining class of employees. I think other than that, we're also looking at, there are possibilities, options, potential options outside the scope of the group health plan. So, but as the Mayor President mentioned, nothing comes for free. So that would carry with it a particular cost, and it would essentially come down to an analysis and review by the council to determine whether or not that option or options would be pursued.
Veronica, I want to ask Youngsville an additional question on their resolution that they're passed, if it's not available online or somewhere. I want to know if they are paying for the 5-year extended time that they adopted. I want to know if they are paying the full premiums for their employees or the survivors. And if so, if they could provide us with any statutes or laws that allows them to do so. Mr. Terrio.
2 points. Mr. Roboto, if you don't mind, after this discussion with Youngsville, if y'all could provide a spreadsheet comparing Lafayette's breakdown compared to Youngsville, once y'all have obtained some information on that, that would be nice. Secondly, I wanted to clarify something, because you brought up again recently before we went off course here, is that you were mentioning COBRA again recently, and you said that it was mandatory that it be offered to surviving spouses as a benefit or as an option. My question to the administration is, has anybody ever accepted COBRA?
I would think all the time.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that we have had employees who have had spouses that have passed away who have accepted COBRA. Am I correct?
All the time. I mean, if you want to maintain coverage for whatever pre-existing health, I mean, you're not going to allow a lapse, because once that happens, you put yourself in a really difficult situation to try to find the private insurance. So with the Affordable Care Act, there's a bridge that now exists that may allow you to find a decent policy at a cheaper rate. But again, COBRA keeps you on the exact same coverage as an employee until the time that you find that.
Okay, appreciate it. Just want to clarify it. Thank you. That's all I have, sir.
And so the last part on this slide in particular, go back one, Sidra, back to the slide, is we called a number of municipalities, and as the comparison started to happen, we got less and less feedback from the other municipalities. I certainly appreciate the efforts of the ones that are included on the chart to provide us with that information, so we could find out where we stood in comparison to other municipalities. But I will say, based on the work that we did from the time that you asked for the briefing. There's not one area where I can find that Lafayette does not offer a better benefit than any other municipality. And that goes to health insurance, lump sum, accrued sick leave. We don't even have one category where we're second place. So as it stands right now, and I'm happy to be corrected, and I think the council would be happy to find out if there is any other municipality that has something that's better than what we offer, then certainly let us know. Because we're happy to look at it. That's what we've been exploring, is what our benefit package is, how does it compare with everyone else's, and then where are those areas where we can do better. And when we find those, we're going to bring those options to the council, and certainly not opposed to going down that path. But based on the work that we've done, Lafayette stands alone in providing better benefits than any other municipality. Okay, Sidra, the next slide is, I think, just the very general. There are some other benefits that are out there that we decided were outside the scope, really, of the presentation. I know victims' reparations allows for some funeral costs to be covered. There's also some other areas where funeral expenses are covered. There's obviously the scholarships that Councilman Conk brought up, the association funds. There's other benevolent funds that are out there that all vary in whether or not you're a member of their organization or not. So outside of that, Mr. Chairman, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present the facts. I am happy to report that Lafayette, in most cases, goes far beyond what other municipalities do, and I think that statement needs to be heard.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation and for the information. I still want to get that information from Youngsville. Also note, just for the record, that Councilman Terrio has requested that a comparison scale be put together, Lafayette specific to Youngsville. Please consider that a request of the council to be provided. What we're going to do now is we're going to first go to council members for any questions that they may have. Mr. Terrio.
Mr. Robideau, I want to do a follow-up on one thing that was discussed earlier and said, or maybe you can get back to it, but the for-life benefits that are provided to spouses, I think it needs to be emphasized, the importance of the for-life benefits that are provided to the rank and file, but also for the fire and police. And again, we need to state that, from what you mentioned earlier, there is nothing that would prevent those for-life benefits to go away. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct, and it's certainly something that's not available to the private sector either.
That's where I was going with this. You don't see this in the private sector, which is where I've been, all my life. So the government does provide substantial benefits. You'll never see these kind of benefits anywhere in the private sector. Not that I've ever seen or discussed with any other businessman or business partner or anybody. So again, just to clarify, the for-life benefits, there's nothing the individual, he or she, whoever it may be, can do that would stop the for-life benefits from being received.
No, that's correct. I mean, it is for life. You will receive the paycheck for life.
Okay.
Mr. Terrio, the only thing I'm going to say to that, and I just have to speak to that issue, and I respect, don't take this wrong, please. I respect that, the comparison to the private, but the public issue is something that stands alone. And that's, even in some of our regular governance, that's why that discussion always goes down that road, is because The private sector reaps a lot of benefits that the public sector does not. And in some instances, the public sector, like in this case, may reap benefits that the private sector does not. And just for the purpose of what we're doing here today, because I could be honest with you, part of my frustration is the fact that we have to go on these fact-finding missions.
Right.
Because of things that are said and how things get away and how people become viewed behind these things. But at the end of the day, you know, I don't want to talk about some of the bonuses and privileges and things that private sector get that public sector don't get. So I respect what you're saying, but I'm also asked, let's talk about public. When we compare it to Baton Rouge and Alexandria and whoever else, Lake Charles, I think, I asked about Youngsville, I'm trying to do apples and apples. Because I think if we go to the private side, that's going to skew things a little because it's no longer apples and apples. So again, I respect what you're saying. Tonight, I'm not looking for an argument, believe you me. But if we could just consider that it's a little different, you know, what people get paid to do a job and other perks. That's all I'm saying.
I
It's a
understand, I
little
understand.
different.
And look, I want to be clear, Mr. Boudreau, look, when it comes to putting yourselves in a line of fire or putting yourselves on the front lines, going into a burning building, private sector doesn't do that.
And
Okay.
even, and you know, and for me, what I've had to deal with over the last 45 days, you know, you got linemen dying on electrical lines. You got operators getting caught underneath excavators. And that's all public people who don't have a lot of the same pay rate and privileges as private people. That's all I'm saying.
And you heard me make the comment earlier when I think Mr. Roboto and I were talking, is that in the breakdown from what we've seen, what applies to one does not apply to all, because you have the categories of rank and file, regular employees, fire, and then police. So that's all I have for now, though. Thank you so much.
Mr. Bellow.
Yes, can we go back to that same slide that you had up? I want the very first one. And I guess, Mr. Roboto, I want to make sure I'm doing these numbers right. When I went back and asked you if we back out the state and federal, is it LCG, is it, if you use the example, $2,750,000? Am I doing the math right?
I would say that the math is correct. The only caveat that I gave you was that part of the retirement benefit is coming from the employees' contribution.
Right.
So the employees contributing some to that retirement piece. But, you know, it's hard to segregate out. I mean, again, it's a 3-to-1 contribution between LCG and the employee. But it's, you know, minus the 2 lump sums from the state and the Fed, and then some small portion for the employee contributions to the retirement plan.
Okay, because
So you said 2.7?
$2,750,000 if I back those two out.
Yeah.
Is what LCG is contributing, on that example.
Yes.
Whatever contribution.
Minus
Minus-
in contributions, and again, 9% of your salary, $45,000 salary, I think was what we used. I'm gonna say 10% just to make my math easy. That's $4,500 that you're putting in a year. So however many years you want to apply to that minus the 2 point whatever million, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, is there any benefits from the actual union itself? Or this is strictly LCG?
Nothing
Or is
that
it-
we presented as part of the union benefits. There may be something, if you're a member, I really don't know, and that may be part of the slide that had the benevolent piece.
Okay.
But
I
that
would
would be
just
over
be
and
curious
above.
if.
That'd be over and above
if
what we
V-
talked
Or
about.
somebody can find out if, just curious to see what the union offers for surviving spouses via fire, police, whatever the case may be.
I don't, yeah, and I don't have that, but we can certainly request it.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Mr. Terrio.
Yeah, one quick question. Ms. Toops, this might be down your road here. I would send a question that let's see if I can phrase it correctly, of employees who have retired, what is the most amount that LCG has paid a retired employee over countless years? Would you even have a grasp of a straw at that as to a dollar amount? Which means that if somebody has retired and the benefits they received, what's the highest amount ever that LCG has continued to pay or has paid out to an employee?
Not sure if I understand the question. If you are asking, what does LCG pay for retirees' group insurance premium?
Everything,
That-
group insurance, health insurance,
Well, group health insurance is the only thing that I can think of that we would pay for a retiree. And we pay the employer portion on the employee only.
but you also pay their salary if they've retired. I know we got MERS and PERS.
Well, we put it into the retirement system, and then the retirement system does pay the benefits that were accrued by the employee based on their years of service.
That's the question that was posed to me. I didn't know, which means health insurance and salary and everything to an employee who, let's assume you had somebody that started work at LCG at 20 years old, at 40 years old, they retired, and say they're 85, 90 years old. How much money has been paid to that employee, salary-wise and health insurance-wise?
I wouldn't have that information. I might be able to request something from the retirement system, but I'm not sure if they could give me.
Well, it was a question sent to me. I just thought I'd put it out there, but thank you so much. See if you can find something. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes, Laura, I think that would be for you. Is that all tax-free money that we're talking about, or they have to pay taxes on some of these funds that they are receiving?
Well, I think our city parish attorney would tell me not to give tax advice.
Okay, well,
But to my knowledge, from doing taxes in the past, workers' comp benefits are not usually taxable, and neither is survivor life insurance. I don't know if there would be some circumstance they may convert those to taxable revenue, taxable income. So I'd have to qualify that statement.
okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other council questions at this time?
Mr. Chairman. Just if I could, as it relates to the Youngsville and the private versus public, I do want to point out that when we do the comparison, Youngsville employees are part of the Social Security system. So that'll complicate the comparison pretty significantly because they'll be limited to whatever the benefits are provided by Social Security, with the exception of the police, because they're under the municipal police retirement system. So I'm just making you aware that comparison won't quite be apples to apples, because obviously the Social Security benefits are not the same as the LCG's public benefits.
Right, right. Okay. Final call. Any council members?